Welcome to the Beyond Anxiety podcast, where we talk about dismantling mental health stigmas, mental health awareness through education, and strategies for overcoming mental health challenges. I'm your host, Darius Fennell, and I'm a mental health and therapy advocate, published author, speaker, and coach. I'm so excited for you to be here. I'm so excited to get into this next episode. So if you're ready, let's go. And welcome back to another episode of the Beyond Anxiety podcast. This is season 1, episode 9. We'll be talking about the power of self-compassion. This is one of the most important foundations, dare I say, to any mental health recovery. It's one of the earliest principles that I had to learn in therapy. And I would even say probably the most difficult one that I had to work through, because I didn't even realize that I was such in a state of having an inner critic and shame and really just pushing myself to levels of expectations that just weren't realistic, right? And if you've ever been down this road, struggling with anything, it doesn't matter what it is, anything that's mental health related, you're going to come across this particular topic. And first and foremost is not to be mistaken with, being selfish, or I would even go as far as saying someone who's narcissistic or has narcissistic tendencies. That is not what we are talking about today. Today is about recognizing your need for you to have compassion and love for yourself. Right? Nothing else will work in this recovery journey if you do not get this part down. Right? I will say it again. It is the most critical part of the mental health recovery. And you will find yourself being in a world of frustration, having a lack of patience, recognizing that your inner critic and shame are really just giving you a run for your money. And these are 3 aspects that I feel like are really a byproduct of not having it. If you have a lot of frustration with yourself, if you have a lot of lack of patience with yourself, if you have a strong inner critic and sense of shame with yourself, it's probably a good indication that you will need to work on expanding your level of self-compassion. And I didn't recognize how bad it was for me until I went to see a therapist. And there are many times I'd be sharing things and the therapist would say, okay, let's pause. Do you hear how you're talking about yourself? Do you hear how you're explaining things about yourself? Do you hear how you talk about yourself when you don't feel like you meet a certain standard? And that was really the first time I actually kind of took inventory with the help of somebody else to say, wow, it is kind of harsh. It is kind of critical. That is kind of rooted. Not even kind of, that is rooted in shame. And again, I'm going to stress the importance of licensed professional help, aka therapy, because the things I'm able to explain to you now is not something I was on a, quiet, isolated journey by myself. Through a lot of frustration and learning how to sharpen my sense of awareness of when I'm not showing myself compassion was a huge step. And not shaming myself even more, but just saying, I'm doing that thing again. Okay, let's take a pause here and look at this from a different perspective. Let's look at this from a perspective of self-compassion. If I had a friend or loved one that I cared about deeply, would I talk to them the way I talk to myself? And the easy answer to that is no. So then why are you talking to yourself that way? Why are you holding yourself to the standard that way? Right? And some of the roadblocks that can kind of come with not having self-compassion is this sense of hustle culture, right? You're basing your sense of worth and value on how much you're able to produce, right? Now, on your job, that may be true, right? They've brought you on board to perform a certain task, and that's why they hire you. That's why they pay you. Okay, yes. But I'm talking about in terms of how you see yourself, right? There are many of us that if right now we had to take a sabbatical or time off from the things that we use to give us that sense of validation externally, right? And sense of worth externally, that we wouldn't know what to do with ourselves. And I can tell you that because that's what I went through about 7 years ago. Having to be forced by a nervous system that was dysregulated, that would not allow me to do anything other than try to just survive the day. And yes, it absolutely drove me crazy because the whole day became focused on how do I calm this nervous system down? And at the time, I didn't have the tools. So it pretty much ran the show, and I was at its mercy on what dial or level it wanted to be on for that day. You know, but I will say the self-compassion part is a huge tool. And again, I don't want to make this a thing of, we're fighting anxiety. We're fighting whatever mental health issue that we're dealing. Nope. We are pulling the plug on the fight, actually, and giving ourselves space to just be. To just be. Right? And in that place, you will hear your true, genuine needs. Not the selfish stuff, not the things we want people to see that make us look good, but the true core needs that your heart, your mind, your body is screaming for. And you are so busy doing so many different things and trying to externally validate yourself that you're not able to hear what those needs are. And at some point, the body is so intelligent that it will turn up the dial on whatever it has to do to get your attention to say, hey, my needs aren't being met. And therefore, I got to ring the alarm because I'm trying to keep you safe. You're out of balance. You're burnt out. You're tired. You don't know what to do. And you don't have a strategy to get yourself from where you are to where you want to be. Right? And then there's other aspects like trauma that come into play. And that's not something I can talk about within the scope of this podcast, because again, I'm not a licensed professional, but this is definitely something that will come up when you do go and spend time talking with a licensed professional therapist. So with all that being said, the power of self-compassion that I found, speak for me personally, is you get to erase the line. What line am I talking about? 3 different ones. There's a line of perfectionism that most of us who struggle with anxiety deal with on a daily basis, whether it's subconscious or something you're trying to reach every day. And I'm not talking about reaching for excellence. That's different. There's nothing wrong with reaching for excellence, but reaching for excellence has a sense of balance where perfection does not, because it's never satisfied. It's never satisfied. And it does bring a measure of success, but that success comes with the cost, right? The second line is sense of worthiness, right? You gotta erase that. Why? Because you're already born with it. Your sense of worthiness was given to you the moment you breathed your first breath. I'm going to say it again. Your sense of worthiness and worth and value came the moment that you were born. You inherited it. It was given to you. And most of us don't know how to walk in that because we were taught at such a young age that we had to perform for it. If you do this, you're good. If you do that, you're bad. All right. So we end up chasing this carrot stick for the rest of our lives, chasing something we already have. All right. And then the third line is unrealistic expectations. You got to erase that. I call them lines because they're things that certain levels that you think if I get to this point, then I'm good. I'm safe. I'm worthy. I'm perfect. I've reached an expectation. And the thing is that line continues to move further and further away from you the closer you think you get to it. And that is where the burnout comes from. That is where just the unrelenting, sense of, what is the word I'm looking for? Not urgency, but just obsession. There it is. The obsession to try to acquire things that really result in neglecting yourself, abandoning yourself. And when I say that, I'm talking about the true core needs of rest, proper nutrition, getting away, taking time away from things. Even if that taking time away is like an hour to where you just sit and do a meditation or do a breath scanning exercise. Something that allows you to be disconnected from your phone, your laptop, the TV, the kids, the spouse, all that stuff. Again, it's a small window, but it's a necessary window. It doesn't mean, I'm going to take a whole, 2 years and just, run up in the mountains and hide from everybody. Although you may feel that way. And I definitely understand the emotion of that. But taking these small pockets of resetting, resting, and reflecting, giving yourself time to catch up on doing nothing, of being nothing, of trying to fix nothing. All right. Giving yourself, it's just like your phone. Right? As much as we use it, you still at some point got to plug it back in so that it recharges. You need the same thing. You're worthy of the same thing. And so self-compassion and the power of compassion gives you 4 different things. Number 1, patience with yourself. And I realized very early in therapy that I had 0 patience with myself. 0. And anytime I make a mistake, I would never let myself forget it. My inner critic would never let myself forget it. And it's counterintuitive to recovery. Because guess what? If you're human, you're going to make mistakes. So rather than say, I messed up and I'm the mistake, how about you say, okay, I made a mistake, but I'm going to learn from this. Give yourself the opportunity to grow from the thing that maybe didn't go the way you wanted it to go. And at some point you realize some things that you did weren't necessarily mistakes, right? You were just making a different discovery at the time. And sometimes you're thankful that you didn't get exactly what you wanted because you were able to make another discovery. All right. The second item is having the awareness of one's own needs. Talked about that earlier. Right? You are worthy of having your needs met. Right? But it's not other people's responsibility to do that. Right? They can come and affirm what you already have, validate what you already have, but they are not the source. Right? Or when you did a book report back in the day, you had your primary sources and secondary sources. People are secondary sources. Or if you think of it like a vitamin, you can't live off vitamin. You don't get up in the morning and okay, I'm going to eat a multivitamin and a a vitamin D and a magnesium and okay, I'm good. No, secondary source. That's what people are, right? Third, and most importantly, you will learn to have the space to say no, right? And being honest enough when you don't want to do something, or you don't have the capacity to do it, or you're not interested, right? Telling somebody no is not being mean. You're not being malicious about it. You have your own preferences and you have your own right to say, you know what? Yeah, that's something I like to do, or that's something I don't want to do at this time. Maybe never. Maybe I never want to do it. You have your right to say that, and it's okay. And lastly, you will have the space to make and set boundaries. Because now that you understood what your needs are, you will create, I don't want to say a wall, but you will create spaces for yourself for those needs to be met. Right? The need to be respected, the need to be seen, the need to be heard. And if people aren't doing that in your life, you have the right to say, you know what? I see this coming. This isn't consequential in terms of me trying to get back at you. This is me saying, if these things happen, this is what I'm going to do for myself because I love myself. That's the difference. This has nothing to do with other people. This has everything to do with loving yourself enough to set certain standards so that your needs are met, and that you're able to be properly loved and cared for, starting with yourself. Just to recap everything that we've said, self-compassion is not selfish. It is one of the most, if not the most important part of mental health recovery. And if you are constantly seeing this within yourself, frustration with yourself, lack of patience with yourself, inner critic and shame toward yourself, falling victim to the hustle culture, or having trauma and severe cases of self-neglect, there's a good chance that you need to expand your self-compassion. And then we talked about the power of self-compassion and how it gives you an ability to erase the lines of perfection, worthiness, and unrealistic expectations. You will also be empowered to have patience with yourself, to give yourself a chance to have do-overs, having awareness of your own needs, space to say no, and space to set boundaries. And if you are willing to take that journey of self-compassion, it is one of the first and most important critical steps in your mental health recovery and anxiety recovery journey. So that is my message to you, my fellow Hope champions. Take that journey. Get yourself a journal. Write down a bunch of positive things about yourself. Look for positive affirmations about yourself. Speak them in the mirror as you're brushing your teeth, after you brush your teeth. It makes a difference because the voices that you say out loud will continue to play in your subconscious mind. And it will rewrite the old bad negative thoughts, right? Through repetition. That neuroplasticity is what's going to be adjusted, and you'll be better off for it. So thank you once again to listening to episode 9, season 1, The Power of Self-Compassion. I'm your host, Darius Fennell, telling you to find your recovery path. Until next time, Hope champions, take care.